Are you ready to take bold action and live a life of brilliance? Welcome to the Bold and Brilliant podcast, where women leaders share inspiring stories about daring decisions that shape their businesses, their lives, and their careers. Today, I'm with the fabulous and amazing Carrie Asuncion Helms. Carrie's been exactly where you are, tired and afraid to change things up, yet yearning for something more. She was hired straight out of college to work for a series of high-tech companies in human resources management. And after routinely working 60 plus hours a week for 12 plus years, she was exhausted and burnt out. One day she woke up and found the strength to ditch her high-stress, great-paying career and go back to school for an advanced degree in psychology. She was fascinated with expanding our superhuman capabilities, expanding our creativity and consciousness, and tapping into out-of-the-box thinking. She's realized that following your dreams is a radical act and it takes bold action. As we talk, you'll hear Carrie share her journey of entrepreneurship, including one bold decision that has created her path of what was next. Her story of resilience, risk-taking, and transformation will inspire, encourage, and support your personal and professional growth. Please help me welcome Carrie Asuncion Helms to the Bold and Brilliant podcast. Carrie, I am so excited. Welcome to the Bold and Brilliant podcast. I'm so thrilled that you're here.
It is so great to be here, Tracie. You know, you and I have been swirling around together for quite some time. So to be here and present and having a impromptu kind of organic conversation is pretty yummy.
Yeah, I love it so much. You know, that's the whole reason why I wanted to do the podcast, was to get a chance to interview even more people, because I get to meet so many amazing people. You and I, we've been connected for a couple of years now. I want to say almost 3 years.
I think so.
And, you know, a lot has gone on in your life, in my life, in the world in these last 3 years. And so one of the things that I definitely want to talk about is how things have changed kind of from where we started to where we are. But let's start off by making sure that our listeners get to know you a little bit, to understand who you are, maybe a little bit of how you became this queen of your destiny that you are today. So give us the story. Tell us about where you started, a little bit of background so that we can get the party rolling.
Yeah. So, you know, the thought that occurs to me, I'm going to celebrate the fact I just turned 60. Yeah. And the fact that, you know, as I reflect on where I've been and where I'm going, I think it's the resilience factor. So I guess I'll just share with you like what that journey's been. So I'd always, ever since I was a young girl, I had wanted to be to study psychotherapy, but I left that to the side. Everybody was saying, "Oh, it's too hard. Why would you want to go for an advanced degree?" So I ended up getting into human resources and rose to the ranks of VP, and it was a burnout. I felt like I was not paying attention to my energy. I was just doing, and I was trying to get approval from some source outside of myself, which now I look back and I think that is not the road to success, right?
Well, it's definitely not the road that clearly now we know you're not meant for, right? The idea of the corporate grind. I mean, this is how we were raised, to overachieve. And I say overachieve because I do want to put like judgment on that, because it's not healthy, and it doesn't make us happy. But these high achieving, like forced need for success in whatever that external view of what success looks like, it's so prevalent in the corporate world, which, I mean, if you're a VP of HR, you are a seriously corporate girl.
I was. And yet I see how it was a stepping stone to where I am today.
Yes.
Right? That ability for me to say, okay, so how do we get out of that grind? How do we let's say, put on the glasses that help us to see that we have somebody else's perception going on. And so now what I do is I tie in human design to help clients, me and my clients, to understand their energetic blueprint. And so I'm a manifester. So I know that I'm not supposed to be in the trenches working 60 hours a week any longer. But I think I'll take that stitch. So I was in human resources, and then I finally, at age 34, went back with a nursing toddler, went back to school for my advanced degree in psychology, only to realize that that wasn't what I wanted to do. I felt like that wasn't enough. So then I went back to studies to do energy medicine. I found that I was an intuitive. I didn't know that growing up. I see things, I hear things, I experience things. I thought everybody did this. Yeah. And
Love those kinds of realizations where, and everyone has them, whether they're intuitive or otherwise, everyone has the things that they think is totally normal, where it's really unique to them
yeah.
and special.
Mhm.
And so I wanted to ask you about, going back, thinking that you wanted to get that advanced degree and going back to when you were a kid, thinking you wanted to be a psychotherapist. Like, what was it about that word or that the perception of what that was as a kid that you thought you wanted that clearly now otherwise?
Yeah. So I've all like you, I'm really curious what makes people tick.
Hmm.
And I had read a book called Psycho-Cybernetics as I was laying on the beach in Ventura. And, I was in my teens, probably about 15 or 16, when my friends are actually checking out the Oogling the Boys. I was reading this really pretty in-depth book about how we perceive ourselves actually affects, again, it's the glasses that we wear, affects who we become. And I thought, oh my God, I want to learn more about that. And this is when coaching was actually coming out. So it makes me sound like a little bit like a dinosaur. It was 19, let's
You,
see.
you already said you just turned 60, so we already know how old you are. It's no worries.
Yeah. But just to know, coaching has not always been a profession. So that was 2005 when I graduated with my master's. And at that point, coaching was kind of taking off. And so I now know that these are what I call God's breadcrumbs, right? So I wanted, oh, and this was interesting too. I just had this aha recently. Ever since I was a little girl, I wanted to help people who were starving. I don't know. I maybe because I felt super privileged, like we always had food on the dinner table.
Well,
No,
when we were little, it was always like, oh, the people in Ethiopia, right? It was always the Ethiopia reference that they were starving. And
yeah, and yet I realized, and maybe you've read my blog recently, where I realized that I still have that I want to help starving people, but it's not starving from lack of food. It's starving from lack of meaning, lack of connection, deep connection. And so that's what I get an opportunity to do now that I'm at this age where I know myself better and I understand human dynamics better. I understand group dynamics, individual. I can tie all those pieces together and help people to learn to love themselves, hence the queen of your destiny. It's really owning, it's seeing yourself differently so that you can say, okay, so if I'm owning my queen, I'm going to take a breath first. This is the resiliency piece. I'm going to take a breath. Like I was rushing to get here today, right? So, because I was driving. So, taking a breath, noticing what's going on in my body, first of all. Oh, okay. So that part of me needs a little of attention. And then coming back to being in the present moment. That's really the point of power. And I didn't know that growing up, but now I know it.
yeah, yeah, I love that. So psychocybernetics really starts to talk about the mind body connection and
Mhm.
so many different aspects to understanding other people and ourselves, of course. And so, one of the things that, as you said, like tuning in and helping people tune in to what's going on for them, one of the things that I find is always is a challenge for a lot of people is to actually have that somatic understanding, the understanding of where these feelings are in their body, because so many people are so go, go, go in their head so often. So if someone says, okay, well, that's great, but I don't feel it anyway,
Mm.
how can you help them get more in tune with what's going on for themselves when they're kind of disconnected from themselves?
Yeah, I actually found early on when I started doing the energy medicine portion of it, there were some people that couldn't get in their body or wouldn't get in their body.
Right. They didn't know how, or they were afraid to, so they were stopping themselves or whatever.
What I found was it was because often were traumatized in some physical form. Maybe it was sexual trauma, physical trauma, whatever, so that they didn't feel that their body was a safe place to be in. So we just start with simple things like I'll say, okay, be aware as when you take your next breath, your belly expanding, taking that breath all the way down to your pelvic bowl. And what are you noticing? And some people might say, oh, I feel cold, or I feel like this vibration. And often it's just calming down the noise or the static enough to say, and creating a safe space for people to say, okay. And so maybe they don't understand what that means, like tightness in the solar plexus or tightness in their shoulders. So I'll just say, put some attention there for a moment and then take a deep breath into it. And so actually, they don't need to know what the emotion is as much as it's just coming back. Your body is always asking for attention. And when it gets the attention, it's like, oh, okay, I can roll with that. If it doesn't, I know we've all experienced this, right? Like we can have this where I experience tension is in my shoulders and I can feel it. And then I was like, oh, yeah, I'm just going to get going with my day. And then I go, oh, maybe better give some love and attention here because if I don't, it's going to whack me over the head.
Yeah.
Give
It
me
just
some.
starts to get a headache or whatever it is that's going to pile up on you to force you to give it attention.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm learning to say, baby, I gotcha. And if I don't have the time to do it right now, I'll make an appointment with it, right?
I love that.
I'll get you. Well, one of the things I think I'm most, how do we want to say, I've been thinking a lot about lately, there's been a lot of conversation about nervous system dysregulation. And what I know in my own experience and in my clients' experience is if we are in a state of chaos or trauma, or we're just way too busy to even pay attention to what's going on with our body, then how can we even think clearly? Like I did a talk last week and I said, put your hands together like blinders on either side of your head. And then what's that like? You can see a portion of the world. But when you open your hands so that you can see a wider perspective, you're like, well, that's what's possible when you calm your brain down, calm your nervous system down, listen to your body enough to say, hey, thank you. Thank you for carrying me through this life. And what is it you're needing, right? Relaxation, water, a breath. It can be just something that simple.
Yeah. Just a moment in time, even. Good. So good. So, okay. So let's go back to you were talking about, coming out of the burnout of
Yeah.
working in HR, looking at energy medicine, learning about coaching. And I totally resonate with what you're saying about 2006-ish for coaching because I started in 2012 and I know that I was not early to the party, right? So but I had never experienced that either. So as you're understanding these new avenues of helping people, you decided to leave the burnout situation and move into a different way of helping people that maybe started to feel more like what you were meant to do from a younger age. So talk about that transition and not only the good parts about leaving corporate craziness behind, but what were the challenges that you faced that you had to overcome based on this bold decision?
Yeah, I'm going to dial back to that time because what I can remember is I sensed when I was in corporate that this was not in alignment. This was not my bigger vision. I just
Mm-hmm.
got sucked into it basically straight out of college. I was working for one of the very first laptop developers and it was sexy and it made lots of money, but it wasn't me. It wasn't like in alignment with what my highest values were. So really my body took me out. You know how we're talking about paying attention. My body basically says you will no longer work 60 to 80-hour weeks. And it put me on the couch in adrenal fatigue and I wasn't able to move. So then I go, okay, that's a wake up call because the odd thing was is I was working out 2 to 3 hours a week. But I remember thinking, I can't see an easy way through. Like, how do people do this? How do they change careers? And
Mhm.
I think they had What Colors Your Parachute was out at the time.
Yeah.
But you can read any number of books, and those are kind of helpful. They kind of point in the right direction. But really, it takes the courage to say, and the insight to say, what is it that I really, really desire? And this is what I found out, and I know that you believe this too, Tracie, is that you just need to know the what. You don't need to know the how initially, because the right people, the right circumstances show up, and you just need to take that next step that's in front of you. So for that one, I had gone to a meditation, a heart math meditation, something like I take my clients through, and I accessed my heart's wisdom, and I realized I had left something undone. And then I said, okay, I'm going to go back to school. Or no, I think decided I was going to do a coaching program. To which my husband said, we don't have the $5,000. And I said, I am not asking you. I am telling you. I'm going to go do this. I'll take out money out of our 401k. Well, I'm going to do whatever I need to. We found a way, because you find a way when it's important enough to you. So we found the $5,000 to get me to go back to to learn coaching. And it was just taking the next step. And then it was like, how do you get clients? Because you can be a really good trained person,
Yes.
but if
And have no idea how to run a business around it.
yeah. And there weren't a lot of mentors now, because like I actually mentor, it's like a SCORE lookalike where in the San Luis Obispo area where I help business owners to write their business plan, to market and so on. And but I don't think there were people like that around, or I didn't know about those people. And so I just took this next step that was in front of me. The training, figured it out, the money, figured out how to get a client, the first client and the second client. And and yet you also know this because you've been doing it long enough. It's never static. We're constantly in a state of change, and it's a matter of navigating it. Or when I notice there's actually something in mental health that it says resiliency or healthy mental state is being able to identify what the situation is early on. So, for example, the corporate thing, I was like 12 years in before I realized I couldn't do this any longer. I don't wait that long any longer. But then went to coaching, and I've done business coaching, I've done purpose coaching. But I find that sometimes it's those nudges, and maybe you found this in your life too. Like when my mom passed, I thought, I'm no longer doing business coaching exclusively because that's not where my heart is. My heart is about helping, I'll call it heart-centered, mission-driven women to take their life to the next level, to create their legacy, their ripple in the world. Because what I know, and I actually said this at Katarina's Fempire just recently, I said, I am impacting 1 million lives by helping them transform their ability to see possibilities in their life. And I know that I can't do it alone, that it's like I have impact on this many people, and then they have impact on that many people. And so we're building this world together so we can create what I call a thriving planet as opposed to just a survival planet.
So you're right. Like the idea of being able to see the need for resilience and change sooner rather than later is a skill that we've grown for ourselves over these years. So important because I think when we're younger and we tend to be more in the moment maybe at that time, and we're excited and we're still moving forward, and you work more and you work harder and you are making changes, and then you realize, wait, what happened? How did all this time go by and I wasn't paying attention to the fact that I'm exhausted and I'm working 80 hours a week and it's not in alignment with what I want for my life, for my family. Like you said, you went back to school with a kid on your hip to see what was possible for the future. And those moments of being able to lean into a challenging change, I think, are the things that the courage that we need to do that are the things that keep us going into old age. Getting old, as they say, getting old ain't for sissies. And not to say that we're old, but every year we have to decide to continue to live into our values and into our mission and into how we're supposed to be here in the world, and not just allow it to kind of just exist without purpose.
Yeah, to just allow life to happen to us.
Yeah,
And
I
I
think we're
think
done
that
with that.
and I think that's why purpose work is so important to me. It doesn't have to be some deep dark secret in how you do this, but
Right.
when my mom passed, I began to realize, wow, okay, so she had a full life. She died at 84 or almost 84. And the fact is that we can get to the end of our life and say, what the hell was that about? Or we can say, that was one heck of a ride,
Right.
right? That
Yes. I love that.
and and so I've been playing with this concept of not just intentions or goals, but I say this or something even better. Surprise me. That's how I got my new house.
Yeah.
Because I said, okay, yeah, we made an offer on a house. We got outbid by $40,000 and I was bummed. And then I
Yeah.
said, okay, wait. I can use the techniques that I use with my clients. So I said, okay, this or something more, show me. And within a week, that house showed up.
I love that. I love the idea of adding that kind of show me or surprise me at the end, because we've heard that phrase, this or something better, because it's a great phrase to learn, especially for people who tend to be relatively fixed in their mindset and allow disappointment to affect them. And we come across so many people who are in that state, especially people who are new to the coaching world, because it's a kind of a tenet of coaching. It's like, well, if this isn't for you, then something else will be, and it's okay. And we can just find out what that is when it shows up. But to welcome the surprise, I think is really powerful. I love that,
Yeah.
because as we were saying, we started talking about resilience. Resilience is one of my absolute favorite qualities that I claim based on all of the things that have happened to me in my life as well. And so what you're talking about is helping everyone realize that resilience is not just a reactionary thing, but it will help you create what you want, because you're asking to have to be resilient every day.
Yeah. And I love what you just said because it brings to mind a conversation I was just having with a potential client this past week. And she goes, I have succeeded at every level, Carrie. She's in her mid 60s, money and relationships. And she goes, and I've lost every bit of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, oh, that's really interesting. So we were talking for a little bit longer. And she's still in the old story,
Mm-hmm.
not in the new story. So I started to reframe like, how can you learn from those experiences what you did and what was your hell no, I don't want to do that again. And it had something to do with betrayal. It's had something to do with trusting yourself. So I said, my guess is now that you've had those experiences, is that you can notice when you are betraying yourself first so that you're not just going along with the flow, kind of like what we were talking about, but you're actually advocating for yourself. You have clear standards, clear boundaries, and you're able to communicate those. Again, that's the queen energy, right? Being able, not being the nice girl. Oh, I don't want to rock the boat. And she goes, oh my God. She goes, Carrie, I totally get you.
Yeah, that gives me chills just thinking about someone realizing that and the challenge, of course, is that often people hear this over and over and aren't ready to own it, right? But when all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, I've been doing that." Not only that I do that, but that I've been doing it for so long that it has become what's normal, and I didn't realize that it's what was holding me back. Kind of going back to what we were saying about this having a superpower and thinking that it's totally normal. We all think that the way that we're living is how everyone else is living. But when we see opportunity for growth and improvement and new adventure and new possibilities, often we don't know how how that's even possible for people, because isn't everyone living the same way that we
Mhm.
are? So that's it's literally what I love about coaching and about great, especially intuitive, like the way that you show up for everyone. I was gonna say for clients, but for everyone in a networking group and everything is so it's so supporting people to recognize that their dream is possible, because they're the only ones holding them back. Ugh, so good.
I just love what you said, because I'll just, you know, say something for your readers. Before I stood up to say I would be willing to do the presidency role with PWN, Professional Women's Network of Monterey, I said, I'm not going to do this alone. I'm doing this with the board, and I'm not willing to do it without you, Tracie. Right? Do you
Well,
remember?
and the only reason I said yes was because of you. So here we are.
And that's another tenet, isn't it? Is that we don't do it alone.
Yeah.
When I was going through my divorce, you talked about bold moves. It's nothing that we ever could anticipate. It's not something you call in and say, dang, that's not an experience I want to have.
Right.
Right. So after a 27-year marriage, I just got really clear. In fact, I remember saying to my spiritual counselor, I said, isn't there a checklist for this? And she just laughed. And then I laughed almost till I peed my pants. I go, there's not. I am not the first person to
Like literally, I mean, it's a real question. I'm really asking you this. Didn't mean to be
checklist.
funny.
And she goes, no, it's everybody has a little bit different experience. And so then I was like, okay, show me. But I don't think I could have done it without having my girlfriends, having my community. And I think that's why you and I are both like plugged into community, because we realize is that we have others that reflect back to us our awesomeness. We have others that hold us when we're struggling. We can begin. I think a lot of us women are verbal processors. So when we start to say it out loud, then it's like, dang, I guess I'm onto something, right?
Right. I always that we were talking about this just the other day in our mastermind at Gather Community, where if you have a thought, something that you want, this dream that you're making, tell someone, because as soon as you say it out loud, it's what happened when I opened Gather. It was like, oh, this is real. It also happened when I closed Gather, when I had been thinking about, do I need to close? Do I need to just accept that this is the end? And I get choked up even just thinking about it, because it was hard. But as soon as I told someone else, you know what, I think I need to let the lease go for Gather, all of a sudden it didn't feel wrong. And it never felt wrong, but it didn't feel hard anymore,
Mhm.
because now it was like in the universe and outside of my head. And it felt right because of the discussion of talking with another person about it. And then, of course, when you talk to one person, but then now it's 5 people, and now it's the planet, maybe on social media, it reinforces that we're making the decisions that are right for ourselves and for the community around us, whatever that community equates, whether that's your family or your town or the
Mhm.
planet or whatever, that, got to say it out loud.
You just brought in something also that I've been sharing with people as I help them to vision, is I say your goal needs to be audacious enough that it has good in it for other people. And so
Love
the
that.
fact that you were looking for, how does this not only serve me, but how does it serve my community? Whether it's the community that was paying for, yeah, the
Right.
membership, or whether your community at large, right? We as leaders have a vision, a bigger vision that, and we don't know necessarily how all the little pieces are going to come together, but the right people, the right circumstances, the right ideas do come through, because it's the glasses that we're wearing. We're on the search for something that's in alignment with that. And that's really what you were doing, I think, is you're like, I still am going to do a community. It's just going to look different.
Well, and you're absolutely correct. And what it was in the beginning, and I think this happens with a lot of people, especially early in business, is you're so focused on how do I make money and how do I do this thing that I said I'm going to do. But the desperation factor of like, I have to make profit, and what's my ROI? What's this like? narrow, self-serving need, the desperation, as opposed to, like you said, working more from a purpose standpoint. And like the reason I told people when I closed Gather and opened the Gather community, I said, I didn't realize that what I was trying to do is build community. I thought I just made a room so that people could,
Hmm.
and it was like, it was more of a definition factor, right? Because I wasn't calling it community at that point. I was calling it gather, which implies community, but also is like, it's a space to gather for you. And I wasn't really putting myself in that community. I was offering a service to other people. And so when I realized that it was all so much more intertwined than I really thought I was creating, when we had to close the doors and open it up virtually, it got so much bigger that I couldn't deny any longer. The whole point was to bring people together. It wasn't to have a room to rent. It was to connect people. And so that's when everything changed. And that's why we're still here 5 years later, is because the understanding of the value to the bigger, to the greater good, the
Yeah.
greater community finally made sense.
Beautiful. I love to hear that, because I met you after that
Right.
particular time.
Right.
So I don't think I've
Oh, girl,
actually.
you wouldn't even recognize who I used to be.
Oh, wow.
I told Katerina not long ago, I said, oh, yeah, I was a sarcastic bitch.
Oh,
And everyone goes, what? What do you mean? And I was like, dude, I was corporate, highly driven to be in charge,
wow.
to run the show, Lone Ranger, and I was much more soft at home with my first husband and having kids, but especially before he and I got married and started our family, it was very much like, I'm working, I'm doing the thing, I'm in charge, I'm smart, I'm. And sarcasm, especially in the 90s, 2000s, that's just kind of what humor was. That's Seinfeld, right?
Yeah.
And modern humor and modern kind of more open sensibilities aren't like that anymore. At least not for me.
Wow. It's funny. You're defining somebody that I don't see you as that. I don't
I know.
experience you as that. I experience you as very, very bright, very creative, bold, that all of that. But bold in a way that isn't abrasive in any way, but truth
Yeah.
telling, definitely truth telling.
Yeah. Well, that's the Sagittarius in me, right?
Uh,
I think also that it's part of being comfortable in yourself and
mm,
being willing to be open. So it was also a very kind of closed off,
mm,
protective of my inner self kind of
mm.
point. It was all about the show.
That takes a lot of energy, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, oh my God, I was just thinking, trying to look in a certain way to be a certain. I was just
Well,
thinking,
it's perfection, right? It's the perfectionist
yeah. Well, I was just
drive that we all had back then, that we're like, I'm going to be great. I'm going to be perfect. And everyone's going to admire me for what I can do. And like, it's just so ick now. I just, and,
huh.
and it allows me to see it in other people in such a way that I have a more understanding view of it, because since it was part of my journey, it's probably just part of theirs too. And we'll figure it out together.
But the thought that occurs to me is what shifted. But we have some
Yeah,
forerunners like Brene Brown and
absolutely.
and a guy that I studied with, Charmaine Sherzad, which is positive intelligence. So there's
Mhm.
certainly what do we want to call it? A push for authenticity,
Yes.
for that ability for us to be self-expressed, to realize, to really ask ourselves who's driving the show.
Yep.
Is it our judge? Is it exterior society? Yeah, so
Yep.
I think the mainstream is that people are becoming much more conscious and aware
Yep.
about their own self. Or maybe it's just because we're getting older. I don't know.
No, I totally agree. I think it's all of the above. I think we're getting older and therefore we understand ourselves better and therefore each other better. But I do think that the world has changed. Having two teenagers, my Gen Z kiddos, I see how things are different for people who are still in their teens and how
Mm,
much more self-aware they are than, gosh, I ever was when I was 17, for
that's
sure.
yeah, that's so true. I think about my 20-year-old and my 25-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And like, yeah, my younger one, he just always very self-aware or
Self-aware. Mm-hmm.
reflective, and he'd call me on my stuff too. He'd say, Mom, it's not congruent.
Yeah, you're not lining up today. Yeah, I mean, the day that my oldest came to me and said, I got some stuff I need to work through. I think I should talk to someone. And I was just like, what? Okay, that's amazing. And absolutely, let me help you, get that put together. And she's doing amazing. And it didn't only serve her to say that, but because obviously, she got the support that she needed outside of parents, but
Yes.
it it's that whole like everyone needs therapy, but as Gen Xers, we say it kind of as a joke, but
Hmm.
the Gen Zers are like, no, it's true, everyone does need therapy. Because it just means you have someone to talk to and be honest with and work through your feelings or whatever. Like yeah, it's pretty amazing. This generation is crazy cool.
Yeah. And maybe because of the COVID situation a few years ago, they had a lot of
Yeah.
time on their hands too.
I'm sure it's definitely a big part of it as well. Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Well, anyway, okay. I want to come back to you because our time is almost up. But, Carrie, I've seen over these last 3 years that we've been connected, this shift that you have done from business coaching to purpose coaching. You were talking a lot about money, then you were talking about purpose. Now you're talking about being the queen of your destiny, which, of course, you get to decide what your destiny is, and that could be lots of money and purpose. But what do you see, like, from this point forward? Like, what drives you day to day to keep going with your current iteration and how you're helping your clients and potential clients?
Yeah. So maybe it's just the reflection of the clients that I get an opportunity to work with and to see them grow. It's like so awesome. I'm just thinking about one client in particular who came to me and she goes, I never realized I had a choice. She's about my age. And I went, oh, yeah, girl, you got a choice. You in your relationship and what you're
And
doing.
you always have, but now that you figured it out, now what's next?
So I see as an expansion. So talking to larger groups, doing more retreats. I kind of put those on hold for a little while as I was caring for my mom and really taking a deeper dive. And so staying along the trajectory, I've also been asked to write down the process that I use in a book so that people can actually have easier access to it. And then, so I'm considering doing that, but that means I'd have to pause long enough to write the darn book. But when I wrote that a chapter in the anthology, Women Living in an Alignment, I began to realize that part was also my legacy. Is what was the process that I went through as I went through a sense of betrayal, and rather than seeing myself as a victim, that's another thing we haven't talked about today. Rather than seeing myself as a victim, I saw myself as the heroine, the ability to overcome the difficulties and learn from the difficulties. And so that's what I want all women to have, is to realize stuff happens that we have no control of. And how do we transform that so that it's our superpower, that it creates a deeper level of compassion for ourselves, for others, and really a deeper realignment with who we be?
Yeah. And that compassion, since there's others, part of that, it is that expansion out into the community, into the planet. And I keep saying this is how we're changing the world, people. Like, that compassion is the key to other people feeling safe enough to be themselves
Hmm.
and honest with what they care about, so that caring expands and we all, have greater caring and expansion in the world.
The last bit I just have to say, because it's been a key component of what I began to realize is I think I started this whole journey thinking there was something in me that needed to be fixed.
Mm.
And then I began to realize, no, just a diamond in the rough looks like some rock that you just walk past. Once it's polished, once the dirt's taken off and it's defined maybe a little bit, the facets are cut into it, it shines, right? So we're the same. There's nothing wrong with us. And yet there's some shining that's going on, some getting unclearing some of the pre-programming that's taken us to think that we were that when really we are like this God spark that wants nothing more than to be fully self-expressed.
Yeah. And shine, shine, shine. I love it. Well, Carrie, I am so glad that we got to spend all this time together. Our time together tends to be so like quick because we're always in the middle of taking care of our community. But, this was probably the longest conversation we've had outside of a vehicle in a long time.
It's so true. And what a delight. Thank
I
you so
know.
much for the work that you do, Tracie, to
Oh, it's my pleasure.
ignite lives with a greater sense of, I call it juicy aliveness.
Yes, absolutely. I'm thrilled that we got to spend this time together. Thank you for being on the podcast. We'll make sure that we share all of your stuff in the notes. And if you've gotten to watch the end of this podcast or listen, make sure you take a look at what opportunities are in the notes for you to connect further with Carrie. Carrie, my friend, thank you so much.
Thank you, my friend. Blessings. Mwah.
Thank you for listening to the Bold and Brilliant podcast. I'm your host, Tracie Root, and I want to invite you to check out the show notes, find out where you can connect with our guests, find out more about what I and the Gather community have to offer you, and be sure to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite platform. Thanks so much.